Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back. Today, I want to talk to you about a very interesting piece of news, or rather ironic, whichever way you want to interpret it. So basically, the Biden administration is imposing tariffs on Chinese products, mimicking what Trump did back in 2020, I believe. Yeah, back in the last administration. So Biden has been uh, quite friendly with China, and it dropped most of the tariffs that Trump imposed ever since he took office. But this year is election year, and everybody knows that election year is what's gonna determine who's gonna be the next president of the United States, and every candidate will do whatever it takes to get as many voters and supporters as possible to get themselves into the office, right? So, what Biden did here is that it's trying to act tough on China again to appeal to the voters that wants a tougher, you know, relationship with China, right? Just like what Trump did. And Biden is doing this to appeal to the voters that would otherwise support Trump, right? So it's basically a political game, a political show that's being played every 4 years, and this year is no exception to that. So here we can see that Biden is slapping tariffs on Chinese EV imports, and it imposed 100% tax on China-made EVs, right? And we can see this funny picture that the US President Joe Biden is taking a spin in an American made EV. The Biden administration reportedly will slap a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicle imports, except that no Chinese cars are currently being sold in the US. If there were, they would crush the American competition, even with the present 25% tariff. Chevy's Bolt, a starter EV with a US $29,000 sticker price, has the same size and less range than the Dongfeng Nami 01 hatchback priced at just $11,000. $11,000 is like 1/3 of the price of of what the Chevy's Bolt charges, right? So if China wanted to retaliate against the new American tariffs, it has a target-rich environment. General Motors last year sold 2.1 million cars in China. In most years, GM sells more cars in China than in the US. So if China wants to retaliate, it can target these US companies that's currently doing business and selling cars in China. Chances are that China will ignore the American tariffs. China's Automotive Industry Association forecasts a 22% increase in the country's auto exports during 2024, following a more than 60% increase in 2023, with the strongest growth in East Asia and Middle East. So China's EV makers are compressing this timescale into as many months as it took 40 years to bring down the price. Yeah, it's the price cuts on Chinese EVs are insane. At $10,000 price point, demand for the Chinese EVs in the global south is effectively unlimited. American, Japanese, and South Korean automakers depend on Chinese automotive technology. GM, meanwhile, is negotiating with China's largest battery maker, CATL, to license Chinese technology for its own EVs and build a joint mega plant in the US. Ford last year announced a 3.5 billion joint venture with CATL, with plans to build a Michigan plant, but put the project on hold due to political pressure. Tesla, Hyundai Motor, and Kia, meanwhile, will partner with China's leading internet firm Baidu in geolocation and AI functionality for driverless cars, while Nissan Motor has aligned with China's Tencent for AI modeling. With 3.5 million 5G base stations installed versus America's 100,000, China is also well positioned for autonomous driving. Low latency, nearly instant response, and high data capacity on 5G networks, ubiquitous in all Chinese cities, support artificial intelligence applications for AVs as well as accident prevention. Chinese cities, moreover, feature new roadways amenable to autonomous driving. Economists, economies of scale through automated manufacturing as well as standardization of parts allow Chinese automakers to sell cars at much lower prices than their American counterparts. Note here economies of scale, which is an extremely important concept um, in economy and finance. It goes like if a company can achieve a large scale of production, that means the per unit product cost of production of that product decreases. So the more of something you can produce, the cheaper it is to produce per unit, right? Labor costs comprise just 7% of the cost of an American car. Of course, no surprise there. China effectively uses slave labor, and there's no labor protections or whatsoever in China, and they can pretty much use these workers for nothing, and that's what made the Chinese cars so cheap and competitive in the markets. Whereas in the US, of course, you cannot do that. You have to, like the auto workers, they are all in the unions, and you have to pay them fairly according to according to the rules and laws established by the government as well as from the negotiations with the unions. So, the auto worker in China and the auto worker in the US are of course completely treated completely differently. If you are auto worker, you obviously wanna work in the US, that's for sure. So the difference between American and Chinese labor costs explains a negligible part for the price differential. Yeah, American car. Okay, so 7% of the cost of an American car as well as 7% of the cost of a Chinese car. So it doesn't cost that much for labor to produce an American car as well. Although more than 100 automakers are fighting for market share in China, most of them use standardized parts that reduce costs. According to a LinkedIn post by automotive engineer Alan Smith, all automobiles manufactured or sold in the US today, except for Tesla and a very small number imported from China by GM, are produced using a parts churn manufacturing method, in which parts are used for approximately 1 to 6 years before they are replaced with new, non-interchangeable parts which offer no benefit over the previous part. Western automobile makers' churn parts use proprietary, non-standard, non-interchangeable parts which are churn-producing vehicles that are more expensive, more prone to defects, and become manufacturer-specific mini monopolies. Smith explains. That used to be called planned obsolescence. Henry Ford in 1922 complained that his competitors would change designs so that old models will become obsolete and new ones will have to be bought either because repair parts for the old cannot be had or because the new model offers a new sales argument which can be used to persuade a consumer to scrape what he has and buy something new. Chinese automakers as well as Tesla follow the original Ford approach that made the Model T every man's car. Biden's tariffs protect the monopoly practices of the American auto industry at the expense of American consumers. Former President Donald Trump on March 18 also proposed a 100% tariff on Chinese made EVs, including imports from Chinese manufacturers in Mexico, but added that Chinese automakers would be welcome to build plants in the US. American tariffs on Chinese goods have redirected the global supply chain to third countries. As the chart shows, China's exports to the global south move in lockstep with American imports from the global south. America's trade deficit in goods is at a record of around 1 trillion a year. Chinese manufacturers invest in Vietnam, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil, and other venues, and assemble Chinese parts with Chinese capital goods into finished products for the US market. Yeah, so basically, China is moving its plants and factories to those Southeast Asian countries, right? And some Latin American countries as well, because they don't have direct tariffs placed on them by the US, right? So if a Chinese manufacturer creates a car in Vietnam and export it to the US, then it doesn't have to pay 100% or 25% tariffs, whatever, on the car, right? So obviously, it's still a Chinese car, but it's made in Vietnam. So, but either way, that's one workaround by from China to avoid the taxes and tariffs. So yeah, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the information and find it useful. This is a very interesting piece of news, but no surprise there, right? So if you liked the video, please comment and subscribe. With that being said, I will see you in my next video.